this video, we're going to build a video upload stream with createReadStream, and then we're going to use createReadStream to create a video watch stream. So we're going to be doing this with Next.js, and we're going to use Busboy for passing incoming HTML form data. Can I use a different backend? Yes, you can use a different backend. Next API routes use Express in the background. So everything that we do in this tutorial will work with Express, but other frameworks such as Fastify have very similar APIs. So what will you learn? You're going to learn a lot of cool things by watching this video. You're going to learn file upload streaming with Node.js, file download streaming with Node.js. You're going to learn about some HTTP headers that you probably haven't used before. And you're going to learn about Next.js API routes. There's also going to be some React and TypeScript involved as well. So the video structure that we're going to follow is, first up, we're going to do a demo, and then we're going to do a code walkthrough. A lot of the code that you see in this video might be the first time you're seeing this type of code. So a walkthrough is handy. So when we're writing the code, it's not the first time that you've seen it. Next, we're going to build the video upload, and then we're going to build the watch stream. So let's start off with a quick demo. So this is the application that we're going to build. It's not very glamorous, but it's functional. So you're going to be able to choose a file. I'm going to choose this file here. You might not be able to see it, but this is the Auth API video that I uploaded about 2 months ago. And you can see that it is a 10.06 gigabyte video. So let's open that and we click upload, and you can see that the upload starts and we get a percentage progress counter. And when the video has finished uploading, we can go back to our application. We can check our videos folder and you can see this auth API.mp4. This is the video that we uploaded. So I'm going to get the name of that file, and then I'm going to go to /videos and then the name of that file. And you can see that we get a video stream here. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit so we can see the play button. And if we inspect here and we play, you will see that we make requests for chunks of the video. And you can see that we're getting a status 206 here, which is partial content. And you can see each chunk here is exactly 1 megabyte. And we can skip to any section in the video, and we're just going to start downloading that chunk of video. So the streaming here is really, really smooth. Let's have a look at the request that we're sending. And there are a couple of headers that we need to keep in mind. You can see this range here, and this is the bytes that we want to get. And then in the response headers, you can see that we have a content range and we have a content length. And these are both really important headers that we're going to have to set manually. So let's move on to a code walkthrough. So as always, we have our index.tsx, and this is going to have a upload component. And this upload component is just a simple form that's going to have a file input. And then when we click submit, we're going to set some configuration for Axios, which is going to be our on upload progress. And then we're going to send a post request to /API/video. We're going to set the data, which is our file, and then the configuration, which is our upload progress. Our video player is just a video element that has the source set to /API/video. And then we have a video ID query string here. So if we go into pages and API and into video, you can see that we have a handler here. And inside of our handler, we're testing to see if the method is a GET request. And if it is, then we're going to get our video string. But if it's a POST request, then we're going to upload our video. Let's have a look at uploading our video. So the first thing we're doing is creating an instance of Busboy here. And then we're saying Busboy on file. We're going to get the file name. We're going to create a stream with createWriteStream. And then we're going to call file.pipe, and we're going to pass in our stream. And then when we're finished uploading our file, we're going to return with a status code of 200. So the reason that we're using write streams is because we don't want to fill our memory with the video file and then write it to disk. So the alternative would be to upload our video file and store it all in memory. And then when we have the complete video file, we could use something like fs.writeFileSync, and then we can write that file to sync. But you saw before that the video I uploaded was a 10 gigabyte file. So we don't want our memory to grow by 10 gigabytes and then write our file to disk. Most servers wouldn't be able to handle 10 megabytes of memory being used just to upload a single file. So our getVideoStream function is going to take our range, which is from headers, and this is the header that I showed you before. We have our video ID, which comes from our query string. We're going to get our video path, and then we're going to get the size of the video file with this fs.statsync. Then we're going to get the chunk start with the range that comes from headers. We're going to get the chunk end, and then we're going to calculate the content length with chunk end minus chunk start plus 1. And then we're going to set a few headers here. So we're going to set the content range to bytes, and this is going to be chunk start, chunk end, and video size in bytes. I can show you that header here. This is here. So you can see bytes, and then we have chunk start here, chunk end, and then we have chunk end divided by video size in bytes. Then we're going to set the accept range, and the accept range is going to be bytes. We're going to set the content length to the length of the content, which comes from chunk end minus chunk start plus 1. And then the content type, of course, is going to be MP4. Then we're going to write a header of 206, which is partial content. And we're going to set our headers, and then we're going to get the video stream. And for this, we're going to use filesystem.createReadStream. This is the opposite method to where we upload the video, where we create a write stream. I think in the preview, I said that both were write stream, but in fact, watching the video is going to be a read stream. This here is incorrect. And then we're going to pipe our response into the video stream. So let's get started building this video upload and streaming platform. So I'm going to initialize a new Next.js project with yarn create next app. And I'm going to say -- TypeScript because I want to initialize my project with TypeScript, and I'm going to call it video streaming. So now that my Next.js application has finished initializing, I'm going to cd into it, and I'm going to open this in a new VS Code window. So when we first get into our Next.js application, you can see that we have this pages folder here, and we have our index page, and we have this API folder here. And inside of API, we have hello.ts. So to start the application, I'm going to type yarn dev. I'm going to use this npx kill port 3000 because lately my ports haven't been stopping properly. So let's go check out our application. So I'm going to go to localhost port 3000, and you can see that we get this welcome to next page. And if we go to /API/hello, you can see that we get a JSON response here of name and John Doe. Let's have a look at this. And you can see that we have a handler here, and our handler is going to return res.status200 and some JSON with name and John Doe. So we can change this to anything we want. So we can say Tom does tech. We can save this and come back, and you can see that it's returned some JSON with the name of Tom does tech. And it's this API routes that we're going to use as our backend. So this stuff only runs on the server. And when you deploy your application to something like Vercel, for example, this is going to run as a Lambda function. So let's rename this file here, and I'm going to call it videos. So our API route is now going to be /API/videos. And if we refresh this, you can see we now get a 404. And if we go to /API/videos, we get our API route back. So because we get a single handler for all of our HTTP methods, I'm going to put a test in here. So I'm going to say const method is equal to request.method. And this method is going to be either a get or a post. So let's say if method is equal to get, then I just want to return this. And this is going to be our video streaming endpoint. Otherwise, I want to say if method is equal to post, then we want to return a upload video stream function. So I'm going to define a function here, and I'm actually going to get rid of this data type here because I don't want to specify what the response is going to be. So I'm going to say function upload video stream, and this is going to take a request and a response. And I can return upload video stream, pass in the request and the response. And if the HTTP method is neither a get or a post, we can return a 405, which is a method not allowed error. So we can return res.status 405.json, and we can say error method is not allowed. So if we send a put or a patch, for example, then we're going to get this 405 back. And we can test that out in Postman here. You can see I'm going to send a put request and we get back 405 method not allowed. And it says here method put is not allowed. Okay, so let's start working on our upload stream here. So I'm just going to copy the request and response types here, paste those in. And the first thing we want to do is to create an instance of busboy. So I'm going to say const bb equals busboy. And then busboy requires that we pass in our headers. So I'm going to say headers. And I'm going to pass those in as rec.headers. And we, of course, need to install busboy. So let's go do that. I'm going to say yarn add busboy. And then we can import busboy at the top here, import busboy from busboy. And TypeScript is going to complain here, and it's because it wants us to install this at type/busboy. So I'm going to say yarn add at type/busboy -d to install this as a development dependency. And headers is supposed to be rec.headers. So now I'm going to say bb.on. And I'm going to say on file. Then this is going to take a callback. And bb.onFile is going to take 3 arguments. The first argument we don't need. So I'm going to use an underscore to denote the fact that we don't need that one. The next is going to be the file. And then the next argument is going to be info. So we're going to use info to get the file name. So I'm going to say const file name is equal to info.filename. And I'm going to use this file name here to write the file to our disk with that name. But you probably want to change this file name to something so you can guarantee that it's going to be unique. So you can use UUID or you could use NanoID or something, and then you can guarantee that that file name is going to be unique. But if you're going to use UUIDs or NanoID as the video file name, you're going to want to have a database so you can keep a record of that video, because the video will want to have a title, some tags. You'll want to assign the uploader and all sorts of information about the video that we're not going to be able to store here because we're not using a database, just for simplicity's sake. So next I'm going to say const file path is equal to, I'm going to open up some template strings here, and I'm going to say /videos/ and I'm going to put in the file name. And this file name here is going to include the extension. So if I upload a video called auth api.mp4, that is going to be the file name that we're going to be using. So the next thing I want to do is to create a stream. So I'm going to say const stream is equal to fs. And we can import fs. So import fs from fs. And fs is part of the Node.js standard library, so we don't need to install anything. .createWriteStream. And I want to put in the file path. So now we've created a stream. We want to pipe our file into that stream. So I'm going to say file.pipe, and then I'm going to pipe in our stream. Okay, so this is going to handle our file upload, And now we just need to handle when our stream closes. So I'm going to say bb.on close. And when our file stream closes, we want to say res.writeHead. And I want to write a 200. And I want to say connection close. And then we want to res.end. And we can put in a message here that just says that's the end. Okay, so now we just need to call rec.pipe bb. And what rec.pipe is going to do is to attach a writable stream to a readable stream, allowing you to pass readable stream data to the writable stream. So what that means in practical terms is you're attaching this readable stream here to this writable stream here with file.pipe. So the final thing to do here is to simply return. So we can give this a go using Postman. So I'm going to come back to Postman here, and I'm going to change our request to a post request. And inside of our body, I'm going to choose binary data, and then I'm going to select a file. So I'm going to choose this one here, that's 2 GB, and I'm going to send this request. And you can see here that we get body exceeded a 1 MB limit. And if our body limit is 1 MB, uploading 10 GB files is going to be quite a big problem. So in Next.js API routes, we can export some config. So I'm going to say export const config equals, and our config is going to be an object. And I'm going to say API, and then I'm going to say body parser, and I'm just going to say false because we don't want the body parser to be enabled. So let's go back and try this again. So we can come back to Postman, and in our body, we can't actually use binary. We need to use form data. So in the first key, you can just say, I want to select a file, and we can select a file here. I'm going to choose this one, which is 1.17 GB, and let's send this along. And you see our request is hanging here. So I think that we have a little error. So I'm going to cancel this request. And this is because it's trying to add our video to a folder called videos, but we don't have a folder called videos, and the application probably doesn't have permission to create one. So I'm going to create a new folder. I'm going to call this videos. Let's come back to Postman, and we're going to try this again. And we get our response. That's the end. So in our videos folder, we should expect to see our video file, and we do. That's it here. I'm going to delete that. Now let's make a little UI so we don't have to use Postman for this. So I'm going to make a new folder. I'm going to call this components. And inside of components, I'm going to create a new file called video upload.tsx. I'm going to say function video upload, and then I'm going to export defaults video upload. So I'm going to define some state parameters here. So I'm going to say const equals use state. And the first state parameter that I'm going to define is our file. I'm going to say set file. And because we're using TypeScript, we can type this out. So this is going to be of type file or undefined, because off the bat, it's undefined here. Then I say const equals use state. And I'm just going to copy this a few more times. And I'm going to set progress. And this is going to hold our progress for the upload. So we can give the user a bit of feedback to know that their file is being uploaded. Then I'm going to say set progress. I'm going to default this to 0. Then I'm going to say error, set error. And our error's default is just going to be null. And then I'm going to say submitting. This could also be uploading if you like, but I like the term submitting. because you could have other things on the form. Let's say set submitting. Great. So I'm going to define a function for handling the submit. So I can say handle submit. And I'm going to define a function for setting the file. So I'm going to say function handle set file. And handle set file is going to take an event. And the type of this event is going to be React dot change event. And then change event is a generic, and it's going to take a HTML input element. Then I'm going to return, and I'm going to return a div. And you can style this form however you like, but I'm going to do it bare bones. It's not going to have much to it. If you want to see a full YouTube clone, let me know in the comment section below. And I've been thinking about how I might make a full YouTube clone. Also, let me know in the comment section what technologies you would like me to use for that clone. If you'd like me to continue using Next, if you would like to see me use a Fastify backend or even a Go backend, let me know in the comment section below. So I'm going to say error end. Then I'm going to print out my error. And this is just going to give us a bit of feedback if we get an error while we're uploading. So if we're submitting, then I want to print out the progress. So I'm going to say progress, and then I'm going to put a %sign. Next, I want to use a form element, and the action of this form is going to be post. And I just set this action here, so if the JavaScript fails, it doesn't add a bunch of stuff to the URL, which could be quite annoying. But we're going to be using JavaScript to submit the form, so this is pretty redundant here. Next, I'm going to set another div, and then I'm going to put a label, and the label is just going to be file. Then I'm going to set an input element. My type of the input is going to be file. The ID is going to be file. And I'm going to say accept equals .mp4. If you want to accept other video files and do some encoding and everything, you can add more video files here to accept, but this is going to tell the browser that we're only going to accept MP4 video uploads. And then on change is going to take our handle. And if I close this up here, I might get some help from VS Code. This is going to be handle set file. Okay, so our label can take a HTML4 attribute, and this is going to be file. The HTML4 attribute needs to match the ID. So you can see here that both are file. Okay, so then I'm going to have a button, and I'm going to set an on-click handler. And on-click is just going to be handle submit. And then the text is just going to be upload video. Okay, so our form looks good. Let's just go check that it works by rendering it to our index page. So I'm going to say index, and then inside of main, I'm just going to remove all of this stuff. And I'm going to remove our footer as well. I'm going to say upload video, close that off. Let's go have a look. And we get a choose file button here. We can select a file, then we can click our upload video, and it does nothing. So let's go implement our handle submit function. So I'm going to say const data is equal to new form data. Then I'm going to say if not file, then just return. So if they don't have a file selected, we just want to return out of this function. I want to set submitting to true. So once we get down to this point, we have a file, and now we're going to start trying to upload it. Then I want to say data.append file. And I want to call this file. And you can see TypeScript is complaining here. It says true is not assignable to type parameter set state undefined. So we can help TypeScript out here by saying that this by default is false, which is now going to say that it accepts a Boolean value. And you can see that TypeScript is now happy. So I'm going to use Axios to upload this video. So let's install Axios. So yarn add Axios. And I'm going to import Axios from Axios. Now I'm going to say try, and I'm going to say catch, and I'm going to catch the error. And then after catch, I'm going to say finally. So in our try block, I'm going to say await Axios.post. And I'm going to post this to /API/videos. I'm going to post our data, and we want to set some config because we want Axios to tell us our progress of the file upload. So first, let's change handle submit to an async function so we can use await down here. And now we can define some config. So I'm going to say const config equals, and say on upload progress. I'm going to have a function. And I'm going to have a progress event. And I'm going to say const % complete is equal to math.round. So I want to round to the nearest whole value. Progress event dot loaded times 100. And then I'm going to divide this by progress event dot total. And I'm going to type config here as Axios request config. And you can see that TypeScript is now happy. So now we have our % complete. I want to set progress as % complete. So in our catch block, I want to say set error is equal to e.message. And then in our finally block, I just want to say set submitting to false. And I want to set progress to 0. So finally is going to run whether we catch an error or we succeed in our try block here. Finally gets run regardless of what's happened. So now let's move on to handle set file. So I'm going to say const files is equal to event.target.files. And then I'm going to say if files.length. And I'm going to use a question mark here because files can be null. So if we do have some files, then I'm going to call set file. And I'm going to set this to file. And I'm going to set this to the 0th element because I'm only going to allow one file upload. Let's go try this out. So I'm going to upload this file here, go for node devs, which is 2.5 gig. Upload it. We get a progress percentage here. And once we've hit 100%, let's check our videos folder. And you can see that we have this go for node devs. I'm going to open this up in my Finder, and I'm just going to quickly open this video to make sure that it does in fact play, to make sure that we've transferred all the bytes. And yeah, it looks good. Okay, so now let's move on to our video streaming portion of the video. So I'm going to start with the React section here, so we can do all the React parts all at once. So I'm going to create a new component, and I'm going to call this video player.tsx. And I say function video player, and I'm going to spell function correctly. And say export defaults video player. And this video player function is going to take one argument, and that is going to be an ID. And our ID is just going to be a string. So I want to return, and for my video player, I'm just going to use a video element. And I'm going to set the source to /API/videos, and then I'm going to use a query string, and I say video ID is equal to our ID. Then I want to set the width to, let's say 800 pixels. The height is just going to be auto. I'm going to set some controls. So these are just options that exist on the HTML5 video element. And this is just going to allow the user to control the video. I'm going to set auto play to true. And I'm just going to put an ID on the video element called video player. Okay, so this is just a component. We need a page to render this component. So I'm going to create a new folder inside of pages, and I'm going to call this videos. And then inside of videos, I'm going to create a new file. I'm going to use square brackets. And then inside of the square brackets, I'm going to say id.tsx. So what this is going to do is to allow us to use a dynamic route. So we don't have to say what the video ID is for every single page. So we're just going to say get the video ID from the third segment of the URL. So our URL is going to be /videos/video ID. So I'm going to say function video page. I'm going to export default video page. Next, I'm going to say const router is equal to use router. And I say const equals router dot query. And I'm going to get our ID from the query. So this string here, ID, must match this ID inside of the square brackets here. If I was to call this video ID, for example, then I would need to call this video ID. But I'm just going to leave it as ID. And I'm going to say as ID is a string. So we say that ID here is a string. Otherwise, next is going to say that ID could be a string, it could be an array of string, or it could be undefined. Next, we want to return our video player. And I say ID is equal to ID. So let's go have a look at what this does. And I'm going to console log the ID here, because this is going to do some really funky things. And this is going to help me explain why it's doing those funky things. So let's go to localhost 3000/videos/auth API. And you can see here that we get ID, and that's undefined. And then if we look in the inspect panel, we get ID is auth API. So when we're rendering this component on the server, ID is undefined, but then on the client, ID is defined the second time, but the first time it's undefined. And the reason for this is because we need to use get server-side props to get the query out of context and then pass it into the component as props. So I'm going to say export const get server-side props. And then I can type this as get server-side props. And this is going to come from Next.js. You can see here, get server-side props. It's equal to async. And then this takes context. Now I want to return an object. I'm going to say props. And then props is going to be an object. I'm going to say query is equal to context.query. So let's clear the terminal here. I'm going to go back to our page. I'm going to refresh. And you can see that ID gets logged once and it's defined as auth API. And now ID is defined on the server as well. So this is exactly what we want. Let's go to our API route here for videos. And we have this get request here. Let's create a function called getVideoStream. And this is going to take a request and response object. So let's move that up into there. And I can say, cut that out. And I'm just going to return this here for now. And then I'm going to return the getVideoStream with our request and response objects. Okay, so let's go back to our client and we can refresh here and we can see that we're making a request here to /API/videos. And then we have our video ID is auth API, and that's coming from this route here. And we're getting back a response of name Tom Does Tech, and that is exactly what we're sending back here. So let's start implementing this handler. So I'm going to say const range equals rec.headers.range. And you can see that we're sending a request here for the range of 0 to 21 bytes. But some browsers might not send this range, so we need to test for it. So I'm going to say if not range, then I want to return a res.status of 400.send range must be provided. Next, I want to get the video path. So I'm going to say const video path is equal to /videos/video ID.mp4. So we need to get this video ID. I'm going to say const video ID is equal to rec.query.video ID. Next, I want to find this video and get its size in bytes. So I'm going to say const video size in bytes is equal to fs.statsync. I want to pass in the video path. And let's just console log this and so we can see what's in this object. And I'm getting an error here. It says no such file or directory for auth API MP4, and that's because we use this Go for Node Devs tutorial. So let's go to that endpoint instead. And you can see here that we get a bunch of different stats about this video. But the one that we want is this size one here. So I'm just going to call .size. If you're building a production grade application, you would want to make sure that the file does exist in the file system. And if it doesn't, then you want to return a 404. But I'm not going to bother handling that error here because I just want to show you how to stream a video file. The next thing I want to do is to get the chunk start. So I'm going to say const chunk start is equal to a number. So I want to cast this to a number. So I'm going to say range dot replace. And I want to use a regular expression here. So I'm going to say // I'm going to put in another / a D, and I want to do this globally. And I'm just going to replace that with an empty string. Then I want to find the chunk end. So I'm going to say const chunk end is equal to math.min. Then I want to find chunk start plus chunk size in bytes. So we need to define this chunk size in bytes. So I'm going to come up to the top here, const chunk size in bytes. And I'm just going to set this to 1 million. And this is going to be 1 megabyte. 1 million bytes is 1 megabyte. So the next thing I want to do is the video size in bytes minus 1. So what we're doing here is we're going to calculate two numbers. We're going to calculate the chunk start plus the chunk size in bytes. And we're going to calculate the video size in bytes minus 1. So if we go over the video size, then the video size in bytes is going to be the minimum number. And so we're just going to use the video size in bytes. So we don't go to a range of bytes that doesn't exist in this video file. Next, I want to say content length is equal to chunk end minus chunk start plus 1. Next, we need to set some headers. So I'm going to say const headers equal to an object. The first header we need to set is the content range. So I'm going to say content range, and this is going to be bytes. And I'm going to set this to chunk start I'm going to put a dash, chunk end, then I'm going to put a slash, and we're going to say video size in bytes. So the content range header indicates where in a full body a partial message belongs. So we're telling the browser where this partial response, because remember we're returning a 206, which is a partial response, belongs in a full body, which is the size of the content. Next, I'm going to say accept ranges, and I'm going to accept ranges in bytes. Then I'm going to say content length, and this is going to be our content length. Then I'm going to say content type is video/mp4. So now we have some headers. I'm going to say res.writeHead, and I'm going to return a 206, which is a partial response, and I'm going to attach our headers. So now we need to get our video stream, and we're going to use the file system createReadStream to do that. So I'm going to say const video stream is equal to fs.createReadStream. I'm going to say video path. Then we want to say start. Say chunk start. And then the end is going to be chunk end. So basically what we're doing is every time the browser determines that it needs a new chunk, it's going to make this request to this endpoint. And then we're going to have a range that we want the chunk to come from. And then we're going to get that chunk from the video stream. And then we're going to pipe this out into the request. And we'll do that with video stream .pipe. And I'm going to pipe this out to our response. And then when we pipe our video stream to the response, this is what goes out to the client. So let's go back to our browser and we can refresh here, and you can see we now get our video. Just going to turn the volume down here. I'm going to play this, and you can see that we're now requesting 1 megabyte chunks, and it won't request any more chunks because it doesn't really need any more. But if we start skipping, it's going to start requesting a lot more chunks here. So that is how to create a video upload stream and video watch stream with Next.js. If you like this video, please make sure you give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more videos. Again, if you would like to see a full YouTube clone, please make sure you let me know in the comments section below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.